Hello and welcome back to the Earthy Goodness Kitchen. It's still summer here in the UK just about, and I fancy a comforting but vibrant curry. So today we're creating a Thai inspired curry with lots of fresh vegetables and summery flavours such as lime and lemongrass. We're serving this curry with an amazing coconut crusted tofu, and I'll also show you how to make your own curry paste. So grab yourself an apron and let's get cooking. Before we make the curry paste, we're going to prepare our summery vegetables, starting with a couple of peppers. I've got a red and a yellow one, but you can use whatever colours you fancy. The quickest way to prepare a pepper, in my opinion, is to first cut off the bottom and the top of the pepper. You're then going to turn it on its side and do a cut down the length of it. You'll then insert your knife into there and sort of roll the pepper away while cutting through and removing any seeds and white bits. We'll then simply finely slice the pepper. Next, we've got some fresh coriander, which is going to go into the sauce right at the end, and you're simply going to roll it up and finely chop it. Then we've got some beautiful fresh green beans, which my brother actually grew, and we're simply going to top and tail them and then finely slice them. Next, we've got one courgette, which my brother also grew, and we're just going to finely slice it into nice thin discs, being careful to keep our fingertips tucked in so we don't have any injuries. You could of course substitute these vegetables for any that you have, whether that's aubergine, sweet corn, peas. They would all work perfectly in this summer curry. Finally, we've got one white onion. To prepare this, I like to chop the bottom and the top off and then cut it in half. This is going to make it nice and easy for the peel to be removed. Then with the root of the onion pointing away, we're going to make thin slices towards the root, but not cutting through it, as that's going to keep the onion together. Then we'll make 2 or 3 horizontal cuts through the onion, once again not going all the way through. You can then chop down through the onion and you'll get perfect little cubes. I'm going to be using a pestle and mortar for the curry paste. I've got a nice big granite one here. Perfect for bashing up garlic, ginger, lemongrass and spices and all that sort of thing. You could use a food processor if you wanted to. It'd be a bit quicker, but I kind of like using the pestle and mortar just because it's like therapeutic and it just feels good, you know, mashing up spices and stuff. So yeah, definitely get one of these for your kitchen if you don't have one already. And let's get on with the curry paste. To start the curry paste, we're going to lightly toast some spices. I'm starting with some fennel, black peppercorns and coriander seeds. You could just use pre-ground spices, but they are often ground months in advance, so have lost their beautiful fragrant flavour. If you grind them yourself, you're going to get maximum flavour. Over a medium-low heat, we're going to toast them for a couple of minutes, making sure to move them often so that they don't burn. I'm now going to add some cumin seeds. I tend to add them a little bit afterwards because they're a bit smaller and tend to burn quicker than the other ones. Continue toasting them for another minute. We'll then tip them out into our pestle and mortar and give them a good grinding. There are a couple of methods you can use with the pestle and mortar. First, I like to use the tapping method. This is going to break open the spices and release those oils. You may want to use your hand just to cover up the pestle and mortar to stop the spices from flying everywhere. Once we've got them mostly broken down, we can then move on to the muddling method. This is where we're going to push down on the spices with the pestle and just give it a good grind, pushing it around and moving it around the mortar. I believe the pestle is the stick and the mortar is the bowl, but don't quote me on that. Once the spices are nice and ground, we can start adding the fresh ingredients. First though, I've got some ground spices going in, starting with some ground turmeric. You could use fresh if you liked. I've also got some Kashmiri chili powder. Once again, you could use a fresh chili. We're going to be using lemongrass in this recipe. It's got a lovely floral lemony flavour and it looks a little bit like this, sort of like a stick. You can get it in a jarred form where it's already been pureed up for you, which is much easier. But if you do get it as a stick, you just need to remove the outer, tougher layers and then you'll be left with sort of a pale inside which you can crush up. And you're going to get that lovely lemony, fresh, vibrant flavour in your curry. So for the first fresh ingredients, we've got a couple of garlic cloves, we've got some fresh ginger, which I've just peeled, and then we've got a stick of lemongrass. I've also got a little bit of nori or seaweed. Typically in Thai curries, they'll use shrimp paste or fish sauce, but since we're keeping this vegan, a little bit of seaweed will do the trick. Once again, we're going to start with a tapping method to start breaking down these fresh ingredients. The lemongrass and the ginger in particular are going to take a good bashing. You can then move on to the muddling and we're going to add a pinch of salt to help break down the ingredients. So this looks pretty good to me. The lemongrass wasn't the freshest, so there are a few strands left over, but once it's cooked into curry, it'll be absolutely fine. We'll then add a couple of jarred roast peppers. In hindsight, I probably should have cut them up before throwing them in, but I did make it work in the end. You could also transfer it to a food processor at this point, which might be a little bit easier. Give that a good mashing up and you'll end up with a beautiful golden red, vibrant curry paste that's going to add bags of flavour to your curry sauce. I did also add a touch of maple syrup just to balance out the flavour. If you were making this curry on like a weekday, I probably would just buy a Thai red curry paste, but if it's the weekend, I'd definitely recommend making your own. So before we make the coconut crusted tofu, we're going to get the curry sauce made. We'll start by getting a large saucepan over a medium heat and heating up about a large tablespoon of oil in there. We're going to add our diced onion, and we're not going to go for like a low caramelized onion today. We're just going to go for a quick cooking and cook it on like a medium-high heat for about 5 minutes. Once it's got a little bit of colour on it and it's going sort of translucent, we're going to add all of our curry paste. If you're using a store-bought one, we won't use quite as much because they're usually quite spicy. Cook out your curry paste for about 3 minutes, stirring all the time. It's now going to release all its beautiful flavour and your kitchen is going to smell amazing. Whenever I use a pestle and mortar, I like to wash it out with water to get the maximum flavour from there, and then we're going to use it to deglaze the pan. Same goes for if you're going to use a food processor. Next up, we'll add both our sliced peppers and just cook these out for a few minutes. Then deglaze the pan with the water from the pestle and mortar or your food processor. So for this recipe, I would usually use a coconut milk, a light one, to keep the sauce from getting too rich. But I didn't have any coconut milk, so I'm going to use a cashew cream, which I've quickly made by blending 150 grams of raw cashews with 400 ml of water. This is a great alternative to coconut milk. You could also use a soya cream or oat cream. It's totally up to you. Stir that in. We're then going to add some light soy sauce to help season the dish. Continue to simmer the sauce for about 5 minutes. Feel free to add some extra water if it's looking a little bit too thick. Then we'll add our fresh green vegetables, including our courgette and green beans, and we'll cook these for around 5 to 8 minutes until they're al dente, which means they still have a slight bite to them. My cashew cream was quite rich and thick, so I did have to add some extra water just to help lighten up the curry. We'll then finish the dish with a good handful of fresh coriander, the zest of 2 limes, and the juice of those 2 limes, which is going to really freshen it up. Give your curry a taste so you can adjust the seasoning. I then added a bit of ground black pepper and a little extra soy sauce. So that is the creamy and fresh curry sauce ready to go. We're now going to move on to making that coconut crusted tofu. If you wanted to keep this dish a bit easier, you could simply add some tofu, beans or lentils to this sauce and you'd be good to go. But I promise you, you don't want to miss out on this coconut crusted tofu. It's going to start with 1 large block of extra firm tofu. This is the stuff you get in the vat pack, so you don't even need to press it. Cut the block in half. We'll then cut each half into strips about 1.5 centimeters wide. I'm going to do a super quick marinade with these, simply with some freshly grated ginger, some soy sauce, and we're just going to mix it all up. Extra firm tofu is pretty robust, so you don't have to worry too much about it breaking up when you marinate it. We'll then make a quick batter to help stick the coconut to the tofu. This is going to be made of corn flour and water, and we're simply going to whisk it together. I'm also going to add a little bit of ground coriander. You can use any flour you like here, such as just a normal plain one or a gluten-free one would work absolutely fine. Once you've got a sort of thin pancake-like mix, it's ready to go. In another bowl, we're going to do a 50-50 mix of breadcrumbs and coconut. If you want to keep it gluten-free, you can use some gluten-free breadcrumbs, or just don't use any breadcrumbs and simply use the coconut. First, dunk your tofu into the batter and shake any excess off, then get it into the coconut mix and give it a nice coating, rolling it around and patting it in so you have an even layer of coconut on your tofu.
Use your left hand for the wet and your right hand for the dry so you don't get into a mess.
Repeat for all your remaining pieces of tofu. It's now ready to fry, so we're going to heat up a frying pan over a medium heat with about 1 tablespoon of oil. These also work great in the air fryer or the oven. If you do them in the air fryer, I'd do them at about 180 degrees for around 8 to 10 minutes, or in the oven for 200 degrees for about 10 to 15 minutes. To test your oil is hot, throw in a breadcrumb, and if it sizzles, then you're good to go. Then you can gently place in your tofu around the pan. Fry for 4 to 5 minutes on the first side, flip them over and fry for another 4 to 5 minutes. You can then put them onto a bit of kitchen roll just to drain off any excess oil. You want them to be beautiful and golden brown, but just make sure they don't burn, as the coconut will go slightly bitter. So these are great on their own or with some chili sauce, but they also go great with this vibrant summery curry. But before we serve up, I'm going to make some quick rice. I've got some white basmati here, which I've rinsed under cold water. I've then got some granulated garlic, a little bit of oil, and some pepper in here, and we're just going to fry it for a couple of minutes. My usual ratio of basmati rice to water is 1 to 1.75, and that will give you beautiful fluffy rice. I'll put the water in, bring it to a simmer, and then turn it down to low, and I'll put a lid on and cook it for around 8 to 10 minutes. Once all the water is gone, I'm going to take the lid off and put a tea towel over the top to leave it to steam. If you leave the lid on at the end, then the condensation is going to drop back into the rice and make it sticky, whereas if you put a tea towel over, then that's going to catch all the steam. Leave it for 5 minutes to steam. We're then going to add some fresh coriander and some lemon zest. Also get in there with a fork just to fluff it up. I would have used lime zest, but I ran out, so this will do the trick. Now we're ready to serve. Okay, it's time to give this a taste. Oh yeah, that hits the spot. It's creamy and comforting, but it's got the freshness from the lime and the lime zest that we put in there, making it a perfect summer curry. Curry paste has given it a lovely fragrant, slightly spicy flavour. You've got the kick from the ginger and then a subtle note of lemongrass afterwards. And then the tofu is crispy, lovely and moorish. It's got a slight nutty flavour from the coconut. Be sure to give this curry a go before the summer ends. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please do subscribe if you're new and share the video with any friends or family you have who are looking to eat more plant-based food. And I'll see you in a video very soon. Bye bye.